Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to see what are the different type of workflows we can have in UiPath Studio. To start with the video, let's see the agenda. First we are going to see what are sequences in UiPath. After that we are going to see what are flowchart in UiPath Studio and how it is different from the sequences. Post that we are going to see what is flow switch, what is flow decision and what is the difference between the two. And after that we will see what are the scenarios when we should use the sequence, when we should use the flow chart, flow switch and the flow decision. To start with the automation, I am in UiPath Studio. I'll go here and I will click on the new project and I will select a process. Okay, so first when we select a process we have to give the name of the process, so I will give here type of workflows. So this is what we are going to explore in this video. I'll hit create. We will wait for the project to load. Okay, so whenever we load a project in UiPath Studio, if I go to the project, so we see something called a main.xml. So now as a developer, the first thing we have to decide is what is the type of automation I want to do. So for example, if I go to the new, I am presented with the four options, that is sequence, flowchart, state machine and the global handler. To start with, let's see what exactly a sequence is. So I'll create a new sequence and I will call it sample sequence. To start with the definition, what exactly is a sequence? So sequences are the smallest type of project in UiPath Studio. When we say the smallest type of project, these are the simplest of the project. So for example, if I want to develop a linear process where the objective is just to take an input and provide some output back to the user. For example, if I have to create an automation where I just ask the user to provide the birth here and I just provide him the age, so that's a linear process. So in that scenario we call this is a linear automation, and for that purpose we will use sequence where there is no if else condition. So whenever we are having a linear process where we have to just go from one activity to another activity in a sequence, so as the name suggests, then we have to take the sequence type of the workflow and it is available in the new sequence. Also you can always go to the activity and you can always drag and drop a sequence inside a sequence like that. Okay, so this thing also works. I'll just get rid of it. Talking about the properties, so sequence has only one property, that is called the sequence name. So for example, if I want to create a sequence that is to give me the age, so I can always go ahead and change the name of the sequence. That is always a good practice. So I will go here and I will rename it to tell age. The sequence name is tell age. Okay, and now what we wanted to do, so as we remember, so we have a requirement where I want to get the user input. I want to ask the user give me your year of birth and then I will give you the age. Okay, so I will take an input dialog, here. So if you'll say, this is a pretty straightforward requirement. We don't have to go here and there, we don't have a if else condition, so that's why we are taking a sequence here. I give the dialog a title, age calculator maybe. What is the input label? So it's a string. Tell me your birth year. Okay, and what is the type? This is an input box. And next thing, we have to store the output. Whatever the input is provided by the user, we have to store it at a variable. So I will go to the results. I will hit Ctrl+K and create a variable called birth year. Okay, and a variable is created for me. So I have created an input dialog. So the next thing is I want to evaluate the age. So I will take an assign activity. I will hit Ctrl+K and create a variable of age. So now this variable will be of type integer 32. How we can change the data type? I can go to variables. The age I will change it to integer 32, and now we have to evaluate the age. I go here and in the value we have to just subtract the birth year from the current year. So I will type here now dot date dot year, and this expression will give me the year for the current date. Okay, and next what I have to do is I have to subtract the birth year from here, right? So birth year, but now if you'll see, the birth year was of type string. So what we will do is we'll convert this to an integer variable, convert to int 32, and we'll close this and hit OK. So now what this expression does, this expression gives me the year for the current date. It's subtract, and then what we want to do is we want to print the final age, right? So I take a message box, and in the message box I will type in double quotes, your age is plus of age, and the age variable now is integer 32, and message box expects an string, so I will type to string. Okay, so this completes our linear process, a linear flow where we are just expecting the age and we give a print a message box that this is your age. Okay, let's run it. I go here and run the file. The bot is executing and it has given me the tell me your birth year. So let's just type 1945. Okay, and I am of age 75. Hit OK, and this thing is work. Okay, so this is how a normal sequence works. So now if you will see, we do not have any condition here, right? So we don't have if and else activity here. Now we'll go to the documentation for the sequence. This is the official documentation, so let's have a read of it. So sequences are the smallest type of the project. They are suitable for the linear process as enable from one activity to another seamlessly. One of the key feature of the sequences is it can be reused again and again as a standalone automation or a part of a state machine or a flowchart. This we are going to see in a little bit later. So now I hope you understood how exactly a sequencer work and in which type of automation you have to take the sequences. Now let's jump to the next one, which is the flowchart. So if I go here and there is the second option called flowchart. So now let's say in the same example why we need the flowchart. Okay, so we are asking the user for his birth year, and we are giving him a age. Now let's say we have a slight change in the requirement and we want to check whether the person is eligible to vote or not. So for that I have to check whether the age is greater than 18, right? So how would I check? So if I go here, I have a flow decision. So if I type here flow, right, so we have something called flow decision, but if I try to drag and drop the flow decision here, it won't work because we are in a sequence and now our requirement is slightly changed that we want to have a flow chart. So what we can do is there are two ways. One is I can go here and I can drag and drop a flow chart first inside a sequence, that also works. Okay, or we'll do one thing, I'll go ahead and start afresh. I'll create here a flowchart and I will set check vote maybe, and now this is of type flowchart. So now what we want to do is we want to get the input and then we want to compare whether the age is 18 or not, and then we want to give a message that yes you are eligible to vote, no you are not eligible to vote, right? So now if you'll remember in the sequence there was something written that it can be reused again and again as a standalone process or a part of flowchart. So what does it mean? So that means that I can easily use the sequence tell age here. How I can use it? I can go to the activities, I can go to the project and I will just drag and drop this sequence, sample sequence here like this, and that was that easy. So now what is happening? It is invoking the sequence here. Next, what I could have also done is we could have directly copy pasted it here like this in the control V, so that also works. So any which ways, right? So we can use the invoke activity also, or we can use the copy paste also. I will just go by this option. Okay, and so whenever the process is starting we want it to invoke this sequence. Okay, so this sequence is tell age, double click and it asks me for the input age and it gives me an age, right? So now if you remember, now the flow decision we were not able to drag and drop it in this sequence, right? But now the check vote is of type flowchart, right? So I can click on the check vote and you can see it is a flowchart here. right? So we can see the name and this is the type. Okay, now let us put a condition now. So to put a condition, I have something called flow decision. I will drag and drop the flow decision here. Now in the flow decision, what is the variable? So let's go here in the tell age. So the variables are age and the birth, and the scope of the variable age is still only the tell age. So first thing is we increase the scope of the variable to check vote, then only the variable will be available to this guy flow decision, otherwise it won't be available, right? So now the next what we have to do is we have to write a condition. So I go here and in the condition I will just simply type age, the variable is greater than 18, sorry 18. So this is in 32 variable, that's why we are directly able to compare it like this. Hit OK. Now it will ask me what you want to do if the condition is true. If the condition is true, I want to have a message box. I will just point it here, and in the message box I want to give a message that you are eligible to vote. Okay, save, and good practice, I will just change it to the name eligible. So that's why it so that way it would be readable. And when and what we want when the age is not less than 18, I want to give one more message box. I will just copy and paste it, and I will point it to this guy like this, false. Okay, and I will just rename it to not eligible, and the content of the message box, you are not eligible to vote. Okay, let's go back to the flowchart now. So we have a start node. So whenever we deal with the flowchart, there is always a start node. We have invoked the sequence which was already available, then we have increased the scope of the age variable, and now we have eligible and not eligible message boxes. So now what should happen when we run the process? We should get two message boxes. Hit save. I go here and run the file. It will execute the check vote flowchart now. Tell me your birth age. So I click here, 1945. Hit OK. Your age is 75. You are eligible to vote. Okay, let's check a negative scenario. I go here, run the file. Tell me your birth age. So I will give 2018. Okay, your age is 2 years and you are not eligible to vote. So we have successfully completed the execution or in a flowchart. So this is how a flowchart works. Now let's read about flowchart in the official documentation. So flowchart, the doc says that flowchart can be used in a variety of projects from large to small project, and we can again reuse in the project. So the most common aspect of the flowchart, unlike sequence, they present the multiple branching logical operators, which we have just seen that we were successfully able to navigate to the true and the false branch. Apart from that, flowchart come up with an auto arrange option in the context menu. So let's see what this option is. So if I go back to the my flowchart, and you will see as of now this is a small process, but the sequence is a little bit distorted. So what the auto arrange option is, if I'll just go here, right click, and I select on this option auto arrange, so the flowchart will be accordingly arranged in a proper sequence so that it is more readable. One more thing about the flowchart to note is that if you are in any flowchart and if you'll see in the properties, there is something called validate unconnected node. So what does that mean? So I go here, I drag and drop one more message box, and that message box is not connected to anywhere in the workflow. That means this message box is not going to execute at all. So now if I just click save, and you will see I am not getting any validation error that this is not connected to any of the activity. But as soon as I go to the properties of flowchart and check this option, this is a boolean. So if I now try to save and run it, I won't be able to run it because I have a validation error which says all the nodes must be connected when this is set to true. So that's why. So I hope you understand this properties of flowchart also. I go ahead and delete this and hit save. for the automation which we are looking at, that is whether a person is eligible to vote or not. So we have used the check vote, and that was a kind of flowchart. So if we go to the sequence where we were not able to drag and drop, we were just able to get the age and we were not able to do the conditioning, right? So there is an activity which is provided by UiPath, that is called the if statement. We could have used this activity here and we could have write age is greater than 18, and then we should be able to get the same output, right? But then now the question arises, when we have this if statement and when we can do the branching here also, then why do we require the check vote? To answer the question, let's think of a scenario that once the person becomes eligible, now you want to check one more condition, whether the person is the resident of India or not. So for that, what we will do, we'll go here, take a flow decision, drag and drop it here. We will check the condition. So I will just type the condition here. So let's say we want to check he's resident or not. So I'll just type true here because this expects an boolean variable. So assuming this is true, and then we want a message box that okay, so if this is true, then this guy is resident, right? So I go here in the message box, I type here resident. Okay, so something, right? So let's say we have one more flow decision where we want to check whether the person is a resident or not, and then we have something flow decision check here. Okay, now if I want to implement the same logic in this sequence, so first we'll check whether the age is greater than 18. Okay, next what we have to do is, since I cannot drag and drop a flow decision here, what I would have to do is I would have to drag and drop a if decision here, and then I would have to check here resident or not, right? So I would have to do a residency check here, and that residency check will be like resident or not. Okay, then I would have to do some check here and then write the logic here. So now if you will see, we have a nesting of if here, and in UiPath or in any of the programming language, it is not recommended to have the nesting of the statements. Reason being, it is difficult to maintain the code is not readable, and once there are some defect, it is difficult to debug also. So that's why we avoid using the nested statements. If it is only one statement, we can always go ahead and select the if statement, but if there are multiple flow decisions like this, then we should always prefer the flowchart one. So I hope now you understand in which type of scenarios we should go for sequence and in which type of scenarios we should go for a flowchart. Now you might be wondering, this flow decision is only expecting a boolean condition. So if you'll check this, the flow condition, and if I hover over it, it expects a boolean. So I can only check it for the true and false. What if I have a scenario where I want to check this condition based on a input that is not a boolean? So for example, I have a scenario where I want to print the days of the week based on some integer, or I want to do a set of automation where the input is like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. How do we accomplish that one? So I cannot go and definitely use the sequence, because this we have to write a nesting of loops, and as stated, it is not a good practice, right? I can use the flowchart, but again this expects a boolean variable. So how do we counter that one, right? So if you go to the activities and if I just type here flowchart, so you will see this is the flowchart which we have already used. So this is the same thing which we get when we select new and flowchart. Flow decision we have already used. This is the flow decision. We have something called a flow switch, right? So let's see what exactly a flow switch is and how to use that. So for that, I will go ahead and create a new flowchart because it will be valid inside only a flowchart. So I will call this flowchart as flow switch demo. Hit create, and here in the start, what I want to do is I want to use a flow switch. So before using the flow switch, let's see the agenda what we are trying to accomplish here. So I want to print the days of the week. Having said that, let's say if I pass 1, I want to have the output as Monday. If I pass 2, I want to have the output as Tuesday, and similarly, so if 3, it's Wednesday, right? So how do I do that? If I have to do that in this sequence, it would be again if and if check. If the number is 1, then do this, then do this, right? If I have to do it in sequence, then again we have to do a nesting. But in the flow switch, it will be very easy. So first thing, I'll take an input dialog. Okay, I'll drag and drop it here. Let's configure the input dialog. So what is the dialog title? I will give is enter number. Okay, and the label, I will just keep the label to the same, and the value, I will hit Ctrl+K, and I will store it in a variable called num. Okay, save it. Let's go back to the flowchart, and now if I go to the variables, num is created, and that we want to have it as integer 32 because we are expecting 1 2 3 4 5 the user, right? So now I have to check. If it is 1, then I have to print Sunday. If it is 2, then Monday, similarly like that, right? So for that, we are looking at the flow switch. I will drag and drop a flow switch here, right? So if you'll see, there are multiple branches of the flow switch. So if I go here in the expression of the flow switch, you will see the expression is of the type integer 32. That is the default value. We can always go ahead and change this to the string. You will see that we can also have an argument of the object type also. So for us, the input is coming as integer, so this integer 32 works for us. And now the expression, you will see it is expecting a 32. Now if I change it to string, it will change accordingly, right? So for me, it works with integer 32. Okay, let us go ahead and use the option of auto arrange. Okay, next what I want to do is I want to check, right? So we want to have a message box, so I will drag and drop a message box here, message box. Okay, so as soon as I drag and drop a message box, so this is the default one, right? So this will be executed when none of the condition is matching, right? So in case of the default, I want to have a message that okay, Sunday, and I want to write it as default. Sunday is the default value. Okay, now next I will go ahead, drag and drop some more message boxes. Activities, message box. Let's do it for only 3 days. Okay, I'll go here, join it like this. Next I will join it like this, and next I will join it like this. So first message box, I want to have the value of Monday, and the Monday, the value would be, now the case would be 1. Okay, a switch case with case 1 already exists. Okay, so okay, it's already available here, sorry. So we just change this to 3. Okay, and for the 3, we want it to be Wednesday. For 1, I want the value to be Monday, so I go here and type Monday. Similarly for 2, the message box, I want to name it to Tuesday, Tuesday. And similarly we can have more flow statements, right? So let's go ahead and auto arrange. Okay, so auto arrange, let it be. Okay, so let us revisit the flow. We are starting it, we are expecting a number from the user. In the default, if it is we have not getting 1 2 or 3, it will print Sunday. But if it is 1 2 3, we'll get the exact day of the week. So go ahead and run the file. Validation here, something validation here. Flow switch demo can't be used, expression must be set before. Okay, here, right? So we didn't pass the expression here, right? So we have to pass the expression. So we are getting the output of the input dialog in the num variable. We have passed it. Hit save, minimize this one, Let's go here and run the file. Enter the number. I will pass here 1 Monday. I will run the flow again. Enter the number 3 Wednesday. Let's try the default case 55 default Sunday. Okay, so this workflow is executing as expected. So I will wrap this video here. Let's have a quick recap. So in this video we have seen that how we can use a sequence in UiPath Studio, how it is different from a flowchart. Then we have implemented the same process with the help of a flowchart. At the end we have seen one more activity of the flowchart, that was a flow switch demo, and we have seen that how we can configure it in the UiPath Studio. To know more about the activities, flowchart and the sequences, we can always visit the official documentation and read it about it. I will put the link in the description. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel, and happy automation.